Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, we're out on the porch today because we wanted to talk to you guys about the American Bresse Chickens.
About a year and a half ago, we came to you guys and let you know that we had made a pretty big decision. And that decision was we're switching from raising Cornish cross meat chickens to the American Bresse chicken. And it's been a year and a half now, like I said. And so we feel like now is a great time for us to share with you some of our experiences with them and whether or not we still feel that raising the American Bresse chickens was a good choice for us.
I do feel like it's taken this long to really have a clear picture of whether or not the American Bresse chickens are a good fit for our homestead, because you really have to raise, I think, several batches of them, go through the entire life cycle, hatching eggs and all of that, to really understand whether anything that you're doing on your homestead is a good fit.
Now, the American Bresse chickens are a dual purpose chicken, which means that they can very easily be used as layer chickens and also be raised as meat. The reason that we chose American Bresse as a dual purpose chicken versus other breeds is that the American Bresse chickens are supposed to get to butcher age faster at about 16 weeks, and they're also supposed to start laying faster at 16 to 20 weeks versus other dual purpose chickens that take much longer to come to butcher size and to start laying.
So before we go much further, let's kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about why we wanted to move away from the Cornish cross chickens in the first place.
And really any other kind of hybrid like that. So we're also talking about Red Rangers, Freedom Rangers, Cornish cross, which are a crossbreed of many different types of chickens to get a fast growing meat chicken that is ready to butcher size at anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks generally.
Right. So like Sarah said, all of those chickens, the Cornish cross, the Red Rangers, the Freedom Rangers, all of those chickens are hybrid. They're a combination of at least 3 different chickens in order to get that breed of chicken. It's not something that the average homesteader can reproduce on their own, because those have been developed over long periods of time. And kind of like a hybrid tomato, even if you could get one of those to lay eggs, just like if you saved seed from a hybrid tomato, that whatever would hatch out of that egg would not be what the parent was. Just like if you start seed from a hybrid tomato, you're going to get a tomato, but it's not going to be just like the one you saved the seeds from. So if you saved eggs from one of those cross chickens, it's not going to give you another Cornish cross, or it's not going to give you another Freedom Ranger or Red Ranger. It's going to give you something different that's not going to have all those desirable traits. So a couple years ago, or about a year and a half ago now, when it was time for us to start raising meat chickens again for that year, it was very difficult to find the Cornish cross, which is what we've always raised. And that is what started leading us down this road of wanting to find something that would make it so we didn't have to depend on always ordering from a hatchery to get meat birds.
We knew going into it that we would not find another breed of chickens that could reproduce naturally and be an exact equivalent or kind of an equal exchange from the Cornish cross chicken.
Right.
We knew that these dual purpose chickens would never be the size that the Cornish cross chickens are at 7 or 8 weeks.
Right. The whole reason that the Cornish cross were developed in the first place, and let me just say this, we have nothing against the Cornish cross, and I'm not even saying that maybe someday down the road we don't raise a batch here and there again. So we're not in any way bashing the Cornish cross. We've had great experiences with them. So the whole reason that the Cornish cross were even developed in the first place, though, is because the meat industry was looking for a chicken, or trying to develop a chicken that would grow super fast so that they could drop off a bunch of chicks at a farm, 7 weeks later come back, pick those chicks up from the farm, and have a full-size bird to sell in the store. That's what it's all about. For them, it's all about turnover. How fast can we start them? How fast will they be done? And how fast can we take them back and get them butchered?
And honestly, you will not find a breed of chicken that grows faster and bigger in that time frame and give you the most bang for your buck, basically, as a Cornish cross chicken.
Right. They do exactly what they were designed to do.
Absolutely.
So like Sarah said, we knew when we started looking at different breeds that we were not going to find a naturally reproducing chicken that would grow as fast or as big as the Cornish cross, and we were okay with that.
Absolutely. But it was important for us to know that and to keep that in mind as we were raising American Bresse chickens. It
Right.
would have been the same mindset for any dual purpose chicken that we decided to start raising for meat and for eggs.
Right.
So we really wanted to kind of start this video with that said, so that all along in this video we're not continuously comparing the American Bresse chicken to the Cornish cross, because it's not an equal comparison.
Right.
It's not apples to apples. It's apples to oranges.
Right. It's not fair to the American Bresse to compare them based on size and all of that to the Cornish, because hands down the Cornish are going to win every
Absolutely.
single time if you do that comparison. And that's not what we intended. And in fact, we hope that we've never misled any of you into thinking that the American Bresse were going to grow as fast and as big as the Cornish cross, because that is just never going to happen.
Right. So with that said, all those things, we want to share with you the experiences that we've had with the American Bresse chickens over the last year and a half. We have raised actually 3 full flocks now to 16 weeks and older, actually.
Right.
And so we want to share with you some of the experiences and along the way almost give kind of a review or kind of an explanation of the breed. So the information that we're sharing today is also based on quite a few questions that we have had along the way from people who've emailed us or have commented on other videos that we've done. And so we've kind of grouped all of the answers to those questions into different categories that we're going to talk about and share that information with you. And the first subject matter we're going to talk about and address is the temperament of American Bresse chickens.
Our experience so far with the American Bresse chickens is that they are a little bit, I would say, on the high-strung side.
Yes.
In the fact that they're not super tame. They're not the kind of chicken who want to just come up to you and maybe follow you around or be picked up and things like that. So they're not. I would say they're not like a Buff Orpington.
Right.
We used to have Buff Orpingtons when we first started raising chickens, and they were more like dogs. They wanted to follow you
Right.
around. They always wanted treats from you. The American Bresse aren't like that. The American Bresse are very good foragers.
Yes, they're very active.
Right, they're very active during the day. They love to be out foraging, which is a great quality.
But one thing about the American Bresse chicken breed is that they are, in general, a dominant breed among like other breeds. So, for instance, if you were wanting a mixed flock, it's very likely that the American Bresse roosters are going to want to be the head of the pecking order, the top of the pack. And you may see some fighting between roosters and them really wanting to establish the pecking order as them being the top dog. So it may actually be best for your American Bresse chickens to be their own flock of just American Bresse chickens.
And this is something that isn't only from our own experience, it's something that we've heard from others. In fact, the original breeder we got our American Bresse from, North Star Farms, they also recommend the same thing. And I do think that it is an important thing. It has never been a problem for us because, honestly, since we've switched to the American Bresse, we've gotten rid of all of our other chickens other than our Silkies, which are off in their own pen. So we don't have a mixed flock. We have 3 individual flocks of just the American Bresse chickens.
Another recommendation that we have gotten from North Star Farms, which actually we've experienced as well, is it's really important to separate the hens from the roosters at about 16 weeks.
Right.
That's about when they're starting to become sexually mature, and the roosters are very interested in starting to breed with the hens. And so if you have a lot of roosters mixed in with a lot of hens, that is stressful for the hens because they are overbred, and that can also keep them, and we've experienced this, it also keeps them from laying on time.
Right. Yeah, in fact, we've experienced that with not just chickens, but with ducks as well. Really, all of even my
And
quail.
the quail.
If there's too many males, the hens won't start to lay on time. They'll delay laying because there's just too many roosters around. So it's important to get those numbers under control quickly And for the American Bresse, that's right at about 16 weeks.
Right, and more roosters together with hens will create a lot of competition for breeding, and so you can see more fighting between the roosters when they're
Right.
all together. Now, when you separate them, if you're wanting to establish a new flock, it's recommended to have one rooster for every 6 to 7 hens,
Right.
and that will be a nice number of roosters with your hens. So we also want to talk with you guys about their eggs and their egg production. Now, the American Bresse chickens, we would consider them to be a moderate layer.
Right.
They lay about 4 to 5 eggs a week per hen. So they're not like production level, but they're not terrible either. We'd
Right.
say, I would say they're good layers.
We're happy with that because honestly, we have, I don't even know how many we have right now, 20 hens, something like that. So, I mean, when they're all laying 4 or 5 a week, that's plenty of eggs for our family and for our daughter and her husband and for my mom and dad, who just, we supply eggs to all of us, and they supply plenty of eggs.
And really, like all chicken breeds, in the spring, they're laying a ton, and then through the summer, as it gets hotter, they kind of lay off, and then when they molt, then they take a break for a while, and then over the winter, you know, there's not a whole lot of laying going on at all. We do enjoy their eggs. Now, the egg color is like a cream to a light brown.
Right.
And there is a difference in egg size from when they first start laying ever, as, you know, pullets, basically, all the way up to when they're really mature egg layers. Now, I did bring some eggs from the refrigerator out to show you the size of the American Bresse chicken eggs. Now, there's been some concern about their egg size, especially as they first start laying. Now, it's very natural for chickens to lay smaller eggs when they first start laying, and then the size increases over time to their size that they're just always going to lay. And that has been true for us with the American Bresse chickens.
So just like with the color of the eggs, several of you have emailed us with questions or concerns that because your eggs are too small, maybe your chickens aren't American Bresse because you read they're supposed to have large eggs. So we want to show you guys what their eggs look like at different stages.
In this dozen eggs, we have silky eggs. So these 6 here are eggs from our silkies. And then we have 3 eggs from hens, American Bresse hens that started laying this spring. And then 3 eggs here of American Bresse hens that started laying last year. So these hens are older and these eggs are larger. What I wanted to show you is that the younger hens produce smaller eggs, and I just want to use this old antique egg scale to kind of judge the size of them. This egg, these younger ones that just started laying this spring, these would be considered a medium egg, and all 3 of them are about that same size. But once we get up to the older hens, their eggs are quite a bit larger, and when we put them on the egg scale, they're actually considered an extra large egg, according to the old-time farmers that used egg scales like this. Maybe this would be considered a jumbo these days, I'm not quite sure. But there is a natural progression in the size of the eggs when they first start laying. They're medium, maybe they would even be considered a small. So from the time that they start laying over the course of about 6 months, the size of their eggs will continue to increase, and that is normal.
So we've talked quite a bit about the reasons why we switched over to these birds, and we talked about their eggs, but the real reason we switched to the American Bresse in the first place was to replace the Cornish cross, which are for meat. So let's talk a little bit about how we're raising these for meat. And actually, in just a little bit, we're going to go in the house. We're going to show you one that we processed this weekend so you can get an idea of the size and all of that. So we've gotten a lot of questions, a lot of you emailing us and leaving comments about how do we properly feed them, because we want them to grow out to the biggest size that we possibly can by 16 weeks old. So let's start by talking about the difference between feeding the birds that you're going to be raising for meat versus the birds that you're going to be raising for eggs, and then using those as your breeders to get more meat stock. When you're raising birds for meat, any dual purpose bird, you really want to be free feeding those birds. And the reason you want to do that is simple. You want them to grow as big as they can, as fast as they can, so that you can process them at the youngest possible age that you can once they're full grown.
So for the American Bresse chickens, we are going to free feed them 24/7 from the time that we get them until the time that they are ready to butcher, which is 16 weeks for this breed.
Now, for us personally, we start with a 22% chick feed, and we do that until they're just about 2 weeks old. Whenever, for us, honestly, what we do is we do one bag of chick starter, and then we move to a chick grower. The chick grower that we use, which is a local brand, so I can't really, the brand you won't be able to get anywhere else, but it's a local brand, and it's an 18% unmedicated chick grower. And we keep them on that all the way up until it's time to process them. And like Sarah said, we free feed them that 24/7 all the way up until processing age.
And then at 16 weeks, for those birds that we're not going to be butchering, for instance, we've actually saved back all of the pullets, all of those that are going to be hens, and now those pullets are getting layer feed, but they're only getting some in the morning. The rest of the time, they need to go forage. But for the first 16 weeks, we are free feeding all of those chickens until 16 weeks where we butcher all of the roosters.
Right. After the 16-week mark, you really don't want your hens to get too fat. So you want them to stay nice and trim, which is why at that point you start feeding them only once or twice a day, depending on how you feed your birds. We just feed ours once a day, and we tend to do about 1/4 pound of feed per bird per day, is about how it works out for all of our laying flock. Now, for those of you who have heard that the American Bresse chickens can have what's called marbled meat, almost like beef, where it has a marbling of fat inside of the meat, there's a very specific way that you need to feed them in order to get those results. If you want to get that marbling in the meat, which is really what has made the French Bresse chickens so famous, is that they are a marbled meat, and the American Bresse can accomplish that as well. The way that you do that is you soak their grains in milk while you're raising them. I'll be honest, we haven't done any that way yet. And really the reason we haven't done them that way yet is because we have not had one of our dairy cows in milk while we've been raising the American Bresse. Now we do hope to do that as an experiment next spring, so we'll be excited to try that.
But like Kevin said earlier, this past weekend, we processed all of our American Bresse roosters. We want to be able to show you the end result of that. We have one of them in the house. So we're going to head on into the house, into the kitchen, so we can show you one of the processed American Bresse roosters.
So here is one of the American Bresse chickens that we processed this weekend. Now, before we get going too much on this, I want to talk to you. I realized as we were coming inside that there was one really important thing that I forgot to talk about outside when we were talking about how we raise these guys. Unlike the other meat birds that we've raised, the Cornish cross, the Red Rangers, other meat birds, these guys we do not raise in chicken tractors. There's two main reasons for that. The biggest reason is because these guys love to forage. They're designed to be a free-range foraging bird, and so we want to raise them in the way that does best for them. The other reason is because, unlike the Cornish cross, these guys are good flyers, and so when it comes to processing day, if you have them all in a tractor, when you open the tractor to get them out, they're all just going to fly everywhere and take off. So instead, we've raised these guys in a hoop coop and in our chicken moat, just like we do our layer chickens, and that's how they've been raised the entire time.
The reason why that is important, and the reason he's bringing that up, is these guys have been able to move around, which uses up calories, unlike the other meat birds where they basically just sit by their food bowl and eat all day.
So even though we've said we free feed these guys, it's not like they're just sitting around their food bowl eating all day like the Cornish cross or other meat birds do because they're in a tractor. These guys have access to, a lot of land that they can go and free range in. You know, there's kind of a unspoken thing here in the homesteading community about raising birds and chicken tractors. As homesteaders, we are supposed to be against raising animals in confinement, but if we really are honest with ourselves, raising chickens and chicken tractors is really raising them in confinement. And I even think that some of the big guys like Joel Salatin and some of these guys who are big advocates of that will admit that the reason you raise them in tractors is not only so that they can, be on grass, but also so that they can't get very far away from their feed and they can't move around a whole lot so that they want to sit around and eat all day. So these guys, I think that plays into why they stay a little bit smaller. I'm not saying that they would grow as big as the Cornish cross anyway, but I just wanted to make that clarification that these guys are free range, they're out running around, burning off calories instead of just sitting around eating all day.
So these chickens that we butchered this past weekend, they were exactly 16 weeks old. We put that in our calendar to make sure that we didn't accidentally let them grow longer. And this is the best time for them to be butchered. And we did it right on time. And all the roosters were right around 4 pounds, which is typical for this breed.
Right. So we are very happy with that. 4 pounds at 16 weeks for a dual purpose chicken like this is very, very good, and we're extremely happy with it.
At this age, the meat will be nice and tender and nice and juicy.
Right. We have heard from several of you, either by email or through comments, that you have also raised the American Bresse, but that when you ate them, their meat was tough and stringy. We pressed most of those people on that a little further to really get them to admit at what age they processed them. In almost every case, when they've had tough, stringy meat, it's because they let their chickens go way past the 16-week mark.
Now, we have done two things. We have raised some American Bresse chickens to 6 months old, and we actually raised one until 1 year old. And while in both of those cases, the chickens did manage to dress out at 5 pounds, in both of those cases, the meat was not as tender. It was actually quite tough. And so that's kind of the trade-off that you need to kind of figure out. What do you want? Do you want to process a smaller bird that has much more soft, tender meat, or older, a little bit bigger, but you're going to sacrifice on the meat quality?
Right. That is one thing that as a society, we've gotten used to this super tender chicken meat. And really, that's because of the Cornish cross. All of the chickens you buy in the store, for the most part, are Cornish cross. And really, the reason that they're so tender is because you're eating a baby. You're eating a very young chicken. It may be a big baby, but it's still a baby. It's still very young, and that's why it's tender. As chickens get older, their meat gets tougher. So if you butcher a 2-year-old rooster, it's going to be very tough. But at 16 weeks old, like these guys are, it's still going to be pretty tender. So we are going to part this guy out so you can see how he looks when he's all parted out. We're going to look at each piece individually so that you guys can make a good informed decision about whether or not the American Bresse are going to be right for your situation.
So I'm going to cut this chicken up, and I'm just going to start piece by piece, just normally how I cut up a whole chicken in the kitchen. I'm going to start by taking off the leg and the thigh, and then we'll separate the two of those. You can see the leg and the thigh here. Nice pieces there. Just going to do the same to the next size. Next up will be the wings. Nice wing here. Okay, on to the breast. I'm going to keep these bone in. And so I'm just going to separate the double breast from the body, and then we'll cut them in two. Okay, the two nice bone-in breasts here. Set them over here. And as always, nothing will go to waste. This back area with the neck will go into the crock pot with some water, some onions, celery, those kinds of things, and we'll make a wonderful broth out of that. It will pick off any meat that we can and have that part of a meal as well.
So there is a completely parted out American breast chicken. You guys, we are so happy with the way that these have turned out. There's a few last things we want to go over with you guys. First of all, where we got our original American breasts. Now we're pretty much just hatching our own to replenish our flocks. We will occasionally change our genetics up and we'll be going back to the same place. That is North Star Farms. You can find them online, northstarbresse.com. We have gotten to know Jen and Buddy at North Star Farms, and they are just fantastic, good Christian people. We absolutely recommend them.
There are other places online that you can get American Bresse chicks. We've had various different kinds of reviews from the other websites, the other hatcheries. What we do know is we've never heard anything bad about North Star Farms at northstarbresse.com, and we absolutely love their genetics. They're very serious about getting great genetics of the American Bresse chicken.
In fact, I think their slogan, which I think is very smart and very true for them, is that they're not multipliers of the American Bresse, they're breeders, which means they're not out just to breed as many as they can and multiply their flock size so they can sell them. They're out to do the very best job that they can as far as genetics and everything else. And that's really, really important when you're trying to keep a breed true. The last thing that I want to say, and I know we keep saying, we're kind of contradicting ourselves. We keep saying, don't compare these to the Cornish cross, but yet we kind of keep comparing them to the Cornish cross. I think in general, one of the main keys to success with these American Bresse is that you really need to change your way of thinking when it comes to how big a meat bird should get and how quickly. I will tell you, and we had this problem at the beginning as well, if you continuously compare the American Bresse size to the Cornish cross size, you're going to be disappointed every single time because they're never going to compare. But if you start comparing the American Bresse taste and all of the other great features about it to the Cornish cross, you are going to be blown away by how much better they taste, the fact that they can be a dual-purpose chicken for eggs, they can free range, they can just be a permanent member of your homestead, and most importantly, they can be a sustainable source for you if times should ever dictate that. You need to be completely sustainable.
So you guys, at 16 weeks of age, these are a fantastic meat bird. They're going to be tender, they're going to be juicy, and they really are just a pleasure to have on the homestead. You guys, if you're enjoying our videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. And remember that the best way you can help us here on the homestead is just to share our videos on your social media. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.